Please welcome your panel, moderated by Jimmy Lee, trustee of Safe Streets, Jersey City, and Hudson County Complete Streets.
Right. Yeah. Well, awesome. Two amazing films. Let's give another big round of applause for both of those. So this month is also Black History Month, and it's an especially apt moment to examine the intersection of social justice, access to transit, and this crisis of traffic violence on our streets. We have an amazing panel for you today. We're very lucky to have Joel Katz, filmmaker and director of the #1 Bus Chronicles, and also a professor at NJCU. Deirdre Newman, artist and bikejc trustee and co-organizer of today's screening. Lindsay Schofield, senior transportation planner with Jersey City. Talia Schwartz, the new president of Safe Streets Jersey City. And Francis Howitt, Jersey Heights resident, frequent bus rider, and advocate with New Jersey Transit. Yeah, so what? Sorry, did I say something? Yeah. So maybe we'll, that was a brief kind of like title intro. So I'll start with a couple of audience questions to just get us warmed up. But when you answer your first question, maybe if you want to do a more in-depth intro, feel free to go ahead and make corrections if I made a mistake. So. All right, so just some warm-up questions with the audience. Who here regularly walks for errands? Maybe just raise your hand. Yeah, pretty much everyone, right? Who here bikes for everyday needs? All right, got a cyclist crowd here. Who here takes the bus for regular needs as well? Yeah, all right, amazing. Would folks be up to just like shout out like, one or two words in terms of emotions or reactions to these films?
Chilling.
What's that?
Chilling.
Yeah.
Scary.
Frustrated. Awful.
Hopeful.
Hopeful. Okay. Awful and hopeful and eye-opening. Okay. Yeah. Sorry for my misinterpretation there. All right. Cool. All right. So let's get started with our wonderful panel. Start off with Joel. What's the backstory that brought you to the #1 bus documentary subject matter? And I'm sure you also have heard a lot. You heard a lot of stories. And what was most striking or surprising about the stories that you heard?
Well, the backstory was, I live in Montclair. I used to live in upstate New York, and public transportation to get to New Jersey City University, where I've worked for many years, was never good for either place. So I still drive, and I would drive by this bus stop all the time. I still do. And just being, documentary filmmakers are like curious and snoopy, and it's just like wondering who are all these people standing out there. And there have been periods in my life where I did take public transportation a lot. My parents, my grandparents were kind of the same working class demographic of #1 bus riders. And then teaching at NJCU for so many years, the very working class environment, it's the same people who ride public transportation and are reliant on it. So it's just being curious. And the stories were, the thing that struck me most, I think, was resiliency in the face of hardship. So a lot of people living really difficult, challenging lives and still, maintaining strength and faith and carrying on.
I think for the other panelists, also curious about just impressions and and thoughts and reactions. What was in either film? What was most surprising or striking for you all? Start with you, Deirdre.
Yeah, I don't know if I can think of anything that was surprising, but as far as striking was, I mean, I think all of us probably, but definitely I can admit to this myself, is sort of just not really seeing people as individuals with backgrounds and life stories and God knows what kinds of hardships and what kinds of strength they've had to, keep doing what they have to do to survive and live well. And what your film brought out is just, how much of a story people have, and that they are just as human as the rest of us that might be in a car or have a life that is somewhat easier, or a lot easier. Yeah, and a lot of that also I see with the stories I've heard of e-bike delivery guys, and how they just seem like a blur going by, and they all kind of look bundled up, and you don't really think of them as humans. But when you talk to them, like you did in the movie with the number one bus riders, you suddenly feel like, oh my God, like this could be me, this could be somebody I love. Somebody loves them, like, what was it, Deborah? No, it was Leslie said, yeah, somebody loves this person.
Leslie was here earlier. I think she had to have left.
Oh,
She was here.
And I think I echo Deirdre, the people's story, the power of storytelling just really comes through in both films. And it really drives a lot of the work we do with the city, within transportation planning. And it can be so easy to talk about, cyclists or drivers, pedestrians, and it feels like they're these categories, but in reality, we're all using a lot of ways to get around. We're people, we have reasons to get around, we have motivations, and making it safer, making it accessible, making it equitable, all of those things, so that people do have dignity. Director Patel, Barka, who you all heard introduce the films, she speaks about dignity a lot. And I think about that with the work we're doing, and seeing the film, seeing the state of the bus shelter, or in the case of the other side of the street, not having a shelter at all, the noise that people are subjected to, that's not dignity in travel and transportation. And there's so much work that we're trying to accomplish, and I want to say all of you are so important to that. The filmmakers are so important to that, getting people to have empathy for others. And I get frustrated a lot of times with in community meetings when we are confronted with people who are upset about the changes on the streets and feeling that they're going to be inconvenienced. Really thinking back to what people are going through, using the bus, using bikes, what their experience is, and I think stories like this really help to build that empathy and understanding, so that we can move forward with a lot of the projects that will make it better to get around.
That was really good. Yeah, I agree with what everyone's been saying. I'll add that maybe not in this room, but there's a lot of people that don't know what it's like to take a bus, and it was just so great to see the movie and I don't know, center the bus and these stories of where people do, people do come together on buses, and there's a whole world there that I guess doesn't get seen by whole populations are missing it, and there's a lot of space there to help others to understand what's going on with other people, and so I hope that many people see this movie. Thank you for making it.
Yeah, I was gonna echo something similar that everybody's already said. I think when we're in a mode of transportation, I think we kind of forget about the people in the other modes of transportation. When you kind of other those people, I think when I'm on a bike, I other people in cars, or when I'm on a bus, I'm like, why are these cars cutting me off? And I think it's really quick to make those judgments, and being able to bring things back to the individuals that are actually working or on those modes of transportation. I think it gives you a different perspective And so having that ability is tough when you're in the moment. If I get like on my way here, I got close passed by somebody. It's how do I feel in that situation? I'm mad at that person because they're gonna put my life at risk so they can get to a red light faster than me. And then I get in front of them, and then I'm like, oh look how fast you were. So I think it's really easy to jump to conclusions on individuals, and I think it's interesting and was really awesome to see in the film that it brings a personality and that backstory to those individuals that we sometimes just equate with a number of we can move 100 people on a bus or 3 people in a car. And so I thought that was you did a really great job of bringing that to life.
There were a lot of really great details about the struggles each rider had. What are, in terms of like the systematic issues, what are 2 issues that you see with bus service? Where can we be making effective investments? And feel free, we could go down in a row, or if folks feel more motivated. Let's start with Joel maybe, but if you have thoughts there.
I mean, I'm not a transportation expert in any way, but I mean, what I noticed in making the film is just a bus stop that's serving very working class people is much more decrepit, and the service is much poorer. Big surprise, but I mean, that's what struck me most. I think is the lack of equitability, because you're seeing in public transportation that say going from Exchange Place to New York City, it looks a lot cleaner and nicer and better service.
I mean, we can take the potential turnpike expansion money and put it toward public transit, and boy, would that make a huge difference with however many billions of dollars that would free up.
I think, devoting more space on the streets to public transit, buses get stuck in traffic, they don't have an opportunity to move as many people as they have the potential to, and be as convenient to more people, accessible, if we did have space for them. So that's something that I think would really make a big difference in Jersey City, but also throughout the state of New Jersey, really prioritizing these modes that are going to move a lot of people and that are more affordable and that are more efficient on the street. So I think that would be a big step in the right direction.
I think that was actually the ending shot of the film during the credits. You had the bus stuck in traffic going across the Hackensack River Bridge, free flowing, 30 to 50 people stuck in traffic behind a line of cars.
I'll add, I think like frequency and reliability. I know that there's infrastructure things we have to do to make that happen, but a lot of people rely on these buses to get to school, to work, places where there's consequences if you're late or you don't make it. And for that to be kind of a #1 priority for public transportation, reliability should be, a priority above vehicles moving quickly at all costs, because then people will choose it, and also the people who need it can use it. And the second thing that I'll add is that my daughter takes the bus to school, and I consider it a very safe way to get to school. She's on the bus with a lot of other high school kids and middle school kids that are going there. I feel pretty safe putting her on that bus every day. And I think that that's an important, narrative or something to talk about, that it's a really great way for people to get around the city and share more about the safety aspect.
Yeah, you took the word out. I think frequency is like the most important thing, but I also think like smart route design really makes a big difference. I grew up in Hoboken, so I look at the hop as kind of sort of a model, but I think Hoboken's very unique as a mile square, so some of those lessons can't be applied to larger cities. But I think there's no bus that runs down Central and the loop back to go to General Square. You have to hop on a different bus train, so train to get there or a bus route to get there. It just seems like things aren't connected, and we're still using transit routes that are many, many years old. And I know there is a study being done to redo that right now, but I think it's looking at transit as a public good and really being something we put money towards because it's a benefit to us. I think we do that with roads and car infrastructure, but then we balk at the idea of spending money on public transit. And so I think if we're able to come around to that and really put our money where our mouth is and say, hey, we want to support this because it's a public good, I think we'll see improved transit as we move forward. But until the state says that's what we're going to do, I feel like cities are kind of like in a chokehold if they can't really make those decisions on their own. They need state funding, and it's all just kind of gets caught in the midst of things.
Yeah. At a recent forum that Hudson County Complete Streets hosted, there was a representative from New Jersey Transit, and that representative pointed out that many of the bus routes are legacies of streetcars. They don't recognize the creation of light rail where people have moved and new residences and work patterns at all. So yeah, there is an ongoing study to redesign our bus routes in Hudson County, but everyone's still waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more question on buses. How do we advocate for better buses? How do we actually get there? What do we need to do here? I'll let Joel off the hook on this one if you don't want to chime in on that on the advocacy side as a more neutral.
I'll leave it to people
Yeah.
who know more than I do.
Yeah.
I think, for me, what I found is, Fred Bauer is the person that responds to all of my emails from New Jersey Transit. I don't know if anybody's ever commented on New Jersey Transit things, but he responds to everything I send him. And I think it's really just making a case in a polite manner and saying, hey, these are suggestions, these are complaints that I have. I'm not angry at you as an individual working at New Jersey Transit. I'm angry that we're in this situation as a collective, and trying to position my critiques in a way that can be constructive. I've called into board meetings and I hear people just rail against these board members time and time again, and I'm like, I'm not going to rail against you. I just want you to give me some money to make my bus better. And so I think trying to approach it in a polite way that's, yes, I'm frustrated. I think the bus service could be improved and there's things that we're not doing. But here are suggestions. Have you thought about these? Have you taken the bus? To me, I think that's the biggest thing, and encouraging more people to do that. If you're on your New Jersey Transit app and you say contact us, it's really easy to submit a complaint, or a suggestion. And I think I do that 2 or 3 times a day if I have the time. It's just like I'm sitting in my bus, I'm like, oh, this could be improved, this could be better. And so I get this person who emails me continuously, and he's like, okay, we're trying, this is actually Port Authority's thing. And then I try to do the same thing for the Port Authority. So I think that's the quick and dirty way to do it. It takes time, it's not fun. I'm not gonna say it's pretty to sit on the bus and write a complaint about the bus driver that blew past me before, and all those things, but I think that's the way that it can be heard. Because they're not looking at my tweets all the time, maybe they are, but sometimes it just it rolls in the same people who see those things. But that's the public domain, and then you have that private domain that you can really try to influence things directly with New Jersey Transit.
I want to add one more. It's a little not as polite, but
I try.
yeah, no. I do think that our elected officials are accountable to improving our systems in the city and in the state, and I know it's sometimes a longer route, but a lot of times we get the answer back like, oh, it's not us, it's New Jersey Transit, or oh, it's not us, it's NJDOT, or and that is a thorny situation to try and figure out and spend time advocating for. But our elected officials, even if they're not going to get us immediate answers, they need to know that we care about transit. They need to know that we care that the buses aren't running well, so that they bring it up at their meetings, and it's not a one-to-one. But if we're going to stay in the city for a long time, then I also want to play the long game and make sure that we're speaking up for it, and that our politicians feel like they have to answer to it, even if they don't have the best answer immediately. They know you care about it, so bringing it up is important.
My least favorite response is when a politician tells me that's a county road.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
so then just talk to the county. That's your job. You represent me to speak to the county. And instead they just say, oh, I can't do it because it's a county road. And then it's my job to go find the county commissioner that oversees that county road to make it happen. And it's almost like, what's the point of you being elected or me voting for you if you're not going to actually do that work? So I definitely completely agree with you on that.
I'll give one optimistic example that we did petition NJDOT to make small changes to 139 upper, and after a lot of municipal people told us we can't do anything, it's an NJDOT road, and the truth is that they needed our help to advocate, and then the local city planners were able to get NJDOT's attention and work together. So the public has to speak up, and then the politicians and the planners all need to also respond, but we need to do what we can.
I'll second that as a city planner. That a lot of times people do think that we have this like magic window to talk to the Port Authority or New Jersey Transit, and a lot of times we're struggling to make inroads, and we do advocate and try to provide comments on things that we can provide comments on. But sometimes it does take that community level advocacy and pressure and a lot of different directions that things are coming from. So I agree totally. Both of those are important. I know it can be frustrating, oh, it's a county road.
You haven't told me that.
But that is important. And I want to share too, when I first got into working, I worked for New Jersey Transit. I was in the research unit. We did surveys and focus groups with mostly the bus riders, because that's the largest portion of people using public transit. And we did the customer satisfaction surveys. And one thing that we noticed is that people using trains, people who tend to be higher income, people commuting to New York, people who are white, they are the most likely to respond, they're the most likely to complain, they're the most likely to be loud, and there's all of these people who are just kind of taking how it is and getting through their day, and they're working really hard, they're working a lot of jobs, they're working hours that make it inconvenient to or impossible to participate in a lot of the public meetings that are happening, and it gets overlooked because you're not hearing those voices. So films like this, having exposure to that, highlighting those voices and advocating for people. I don't want to say for people, but understanding that those stories aren't being told and brought to the attention of the people making decisions, and it's so important. Just recognizing that if we do have the privilege of having that time to advocate, that we should, and it is a privilege, and to continue doing what you're all doing, because I know that you in this room are the people who are investing a lot of your personal time in making these systems better.
Cool, amazing. Who's dialing into the next New Jersey Transit Board meeting? All right. Yeah. Let's shift our attention to the street project as well for a little bit. Curious about things that were surprising there. There's this phenomenon of induced demand that we often talk about when it comes to like widening highways, and it doesn't work because you get what you build for. If you build it, they will come. But it also applies to like every infrastructure that you could do, from car parking to bus frequency that was mentioned earlier to bike lanes. Who is currently using our streets? What are the opportunities to induce demand for safer and more sustainable modes of travel? So it's a lot of questions in there. Feel free to take any part of that. Maybe we'll go in order.
Well, I'm sad that filmmakers aren't here. It's a beautifully made film, and I think it's urgent issues. I think the other panelists have greater expertise than I do, though, the issues themselves.
I wouldn't say that I have any expertise exactly, but the most shocking and sort of horrific thing about what I saw in the street project, it was my third time watching it actually, was the jaywalking thing and how infrastructure isn't built for people. It's built for people in cars, convenience and speed and pleasure, and people on foot or on bicycles or other modes of transportation outside of motor vehicles just have to risk their lives. Like the woman was it 2 children that were killed with that woman jaywalking across the street? And that a lot of police would use the law, I guess it's a law against jaywalking, to profile people to choose who they're gonna use the law to benefit or not. And shocking and horrible.
I think you bringing up jaywalking, one of the things I think about a lot of times when you're observing people jaywalking is that it sometimes feels like a safer place to cross than the intersection. And I know I've been in that position. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. And so just the fact that, we could penalize people for trying to make a safer decision for themselves is terrible. And then that also brings to mind that we have so much work to do on our intersections and making those safer places to cross, because those are obviously important. But in terms of who's using the streets and who wants to be using the streets in different ways, we see that with the changes that are happening in Jersey City. We have cameras around the city that are taking counts of people driving and people in the bike lanes, people walking, and looking at something like Bergen Avenue, which I understand people are going to visit after this. Just seeing the growth in the usage by other modes of transportation, over 1,000 cyclists using that a day, and growing, and seeing that really around the city, even on streets without the infrastructure yet, seeing hundreds of people cycling every day. And when I'm out cycling now, and when I see another woman, when I see someone with their child, it's that indicator. I think, was it Dulcie that that mentioned that? Oh, you're in the audience. That you mentioned that it's the indicator of feeling safe, and that's one of our goals in the city, is to make it feel safe. I just got back from a trip overseas, and there were teenagers who were biking around the city themselves. There were lots of parents with kids on cargo bikes, and the kids are having a great time on the back of the bikes, chatting with each other, and seeing older people biking, just every age, every ability, and that's something that I'm really excited to continue working on in Jersey City and realizing that vision.
In terms of what was surprising, I hadn't seen the movie before, and what's going on in Arizona, like the contrast of what's going on there and what I feel like is going on here, made me really bummed out about Arizona, but also it did make me grateful for the activism and the partnership with the city that we're seeing happening in Jersey City, and it did make me feel hopeful. But what I can't stop thinking about is like how those store owners were so thankful that someone was talking to them about improving the situation, and that it was like they were awake. They were, oh, you're going to help us with this problem? They were so grateful, and I think the reason that I'm thinking about it so much is it does feel like a kind of awakening when you realize, oh, the street is not just for the car. We store owners on the street have a right to cross it safely, and on a lot of these community calls in Jersey City, parents are saying, I have to get my kid to school, and they're driving, and they're saying, I don't feel safe with my kid walking to school, so I have to drive, and now you want to make it harder for me to drive with all these road improvements. And it's like the focus of awakening them, saying, well, actually, your kid should be able to walk safely to school, but they don't even feel like they have that right to demand that. They only feel like they have the right to demand more access to car space and driving faster. And so that's what I'm thinking about, is helping people understand that they have the right for their kids to walk to school safely.
Yeah, I think, so I actually live in Heights, a couple blocks away from 2 different schools. And so it's very interesting, because I walk to Central to go catch a bus every morning, and the number of parents that are like pulling over into the most ridiculous places and stopping at crosswalks and stopping, and we have crossing guards that are directing them to drive around so they can drop their kids off faster. And then I'm assuming, because it's a public school, that they're driving a few blocks away to go back to their house. And it's to me, I grew up on 11th and Hudson, and I walked to Wallace every morning. And then I walked, when I was in high school, I walked to Hoboken High School. And so for me, or I biked there every day, and I like befriended the security guard to lock my bike inside. And so I think it's just that juxtaposition of like, my parents would like literally be like, we're not driving you to school. That is 3 blocks. Like, you're gonna walk those 3 blocks and we'll walk with you, but we're not driving you to school. And so I think that it's just so surprising that I think the Phoenix thing was really eye-opening, that there's so much negativity about changing something that people are so used to, and people are like, oh, we don't have funding, so we won't put anything behind this. But for something else, they'll just find the funding, and I think it's the priorities are not there yet in either the politicians' minds or the public's minds that this is something we really should have and we should want as a community. And I think I've been spoiled growing up in Hoboken and moving to the Heights where everything's so walkable that to me it's like I just assume that's a right, that we should have stop signs at most intersections and crosswalks, and it should be easy for me to get where I'm going by foot or by bike. And so I think it's kind of sad to see other areas of the country that have just been this urban sprawl, or not urban sprawl, suburban sprawl of just large streets where it's like almost why are you walking? There must be something wrong with you to be on foot. So I think that's it was very surprising to see that, because where I live and where I've grown up is not like that at all.
Yeah, I've definitely personally gotten that question or comment or suspicion, like when taking transit or the bus, like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Did your car break down?
Yeah, exactly.
My coworkers from downtown are like, oh, you don't take the path? They're like, you take New Jersey Transit? And I'm like, it's 20 minutes on the bus. You take 30 on the path. So I don't like.
To get into New York.
Yeah. Like I'm also fortunate I'm on the very end of the beginning of the 119 in Jersey City. So for me, it's 5 stops into the Port Authority, 5 stops out. Whereas for other people, I know of people coming from Bayonne and they're on the same bus line for an hour and 45 minutes. So it's crazy to think that I'll run into my friend who lives in a different city on the same bus line.
I just want to. I don't think we expected, Dulcie, that you would be here, but thank you for being here. Yeah, I think when we open up for audience questions, if you have thoughts you want to share as well, I think it'd be great to hear them. I wanted to ask one more question on the street project. Joel, you mentioned earlier, the bus or the transit infrastructure in places that are disadvantaged or it's much worse. Depends on who's using it, who lives there. There's a similar theme in the street project: most dangerous roads, right, and who traffic violence affects. How do we think about justice and equity in mobility and road design? How does this legacy of social, economic, racial justice perpetuate traffic violence, and what do we need to do about it?
That's a big question. Sure.
I think I'll start. Okay, yeah. It's a really big problem. There's a lot of layers to it, and I'm not an expert. For us, what we've been thinking about is walking the streets and spending time talking to people, finding out what their pain points are. Like Lindsay said, not everyone can get to public meetings, not everyone can show up, so trying to get more voices involved in the process as much as possible. And then if you can showing up yourself and speaking up, because it does make a difference. And I think this is something we've been talking about a little bit in Jersey City. Where do we have the best bike infrastructure, or where do we have the best, most of the services are showing up. Safer intersections are really downtown at the moment. And so how do we spread that out? And I don't have the best solutions, but talking to the people and showing up at the meetings that we can, and bringing those council people along with us as much as possible. That's been our approach.
I think to add on to that, something we're doing now, we're doing a traffic calming toolkit, and part of that study was to figure out how can we know where we're investing money and be more informed of just the baseline, what neighborhoods, what are the surrounding level area demographics and incomes of those areas that we've invested in so far. So we have some hard data to understand, yes, we have invested more in this neighborhood than this other neighborhood, and we need to figure out a way to correct that. We've been pretty conscious in where we're making investments, and they look different in different neighborhoods. And it's important to get community buy-in, and sometimes the interventions that are adopted downtown and really well supported downtown, like a protected bike lane, can be more challenging to implement outside of downtown. And some of the things that we've noticed is, really listening to the community. If they're asking for safer intersections, if they're asking for trees, if they're asking for some of these other areas of infrastructure that we can implement, starting with that and introducing some of these other information, education about what's possible and what we can do in the future, and kind of building on that, so that there is that level of support, but we're also meeting the needs that people are expressing to us. And so I think that's important to both understand and reflect on where we're doing, where we have room for improvement, and then really listening, and like Talia was saying, getting out into the community, having conversations. It's been really important, and it's also really helpful that the advocacy community is doing that, and also when they're more available to meet with us and can kind of tell us about what they're hearing in the streets, and that's really, really impactful and useful as well.
I add one thing, this is not a policy solution, but it's an idea from Brian Stevenson, the civil rights attorney who founded the Equal Justice Initiative. They wrote the book Just Mercy, which became a film. He talks about one of the keys of social change being proximity, of just getting close to the problem you're trying to understand. And just however we can do that individually in our own lives, of talk to the bus driver, talk to the delivery person who's on a bike, just connecting more on a human level. And it's a very basic concept, but I think Brian Stevenson got that right.
Yeah, I just want to add a thought about that, is that some solutions that we think are obvious or the best solution for your specific needs aren't always the right solution for your neighbor. And you talking, like getting off our computers or screens stuff and actually talking to neighbors and figuring out where's the common space. So like buses, like the bus your phone, buses are a real common space where a lot of people agree that bus service is needed. New Jersey Transit is having a whole thing right now about proper funding and whether or not we can fund New Jersey Transit. And it's the area where we've had the most people show up and say, no, we need to save the buses, or we need to save, and that's something the advocacy community, I think, can really get behind and improve a lot of people's lives and build trust that the streets are for everyone and we are fighting for everyone.
I would also just add, I feel like a lot of times you think of different areas in the city, and I think the streets are designed in a way, and then there's no other means for them to get places. And like when I bike to Liberty State Park a lot. Sometimes it's leisurely, sometimes it's on errands, sometimes it's for exercise. But like certain areas near Liberty State Park, there's not a lot of bus service. There's not a lot of alternatives to driving, and putting a protected bike lane in isn't necessarily a huge benefit for them. Because I've worked with people from there at the golf course for Liberty Park. I've worked at restaurants, and they're driving because that's their means to get from where they have to be. And it's not like they want to drive. And then those roads sometimes happen to me at least seem the most dangerous because everybody there has a car mindset, and then I'm the different type of vehicle on those roads. And so I think to your point, like what's best for me when I'm trying to exercise and go to Liberty State Park is not best for the person commuting from the Bergen Lafayette neighborhood or Greenville and trying to get somewhere else. And I think the legacy of it is sometimes those roads were made in a way to separate communities and designed in a way to really I use the word alienate them from the rest of the city as that was the means to the end. That's what they wanted to do. And so I think you have roads in other parts of the city that are enormous in comparison to other parts. And so I think it has to be a combination of building better infrastructure, building better safe streets, but also pairing that with better access to other means and really providing them an alternative. Because if there was a solution for something, they might take that alternative versus just hopping in their car. But I know from my friends who live on that side of the city, it's easier for them to drive to the Heights than to try and catch a bus to come to the Heights, just because that's the way it's designed. There's no way for them to get there, and an Uber is $20, or trying to bike might take 20 or 30 minutes. And for me, biking,
scary.
Yeah, biking is easy for me, and I'm okay doing it, but my friends might not want to take that risk. And so I think just recognizing exactly what you said, which is that it really has to be people-based, and we have to really work with those communities to design things that are impactful for them.
All really great insights. I wanted to see if we had a couple of questions from the audience, and and if you want to say a few words as well, I don't know if you have thoughts on.
I just want to say, like, the activists. Okay, so the activists in Arizona, people don't know 85% of people that are hit by cars are standing in the crosswalk. I learned this after, like you said, when you get into the situation, that's when you become the expert. So after my crash, it took a lot for me to I don't stand in crosswalks, and I do jaywalk. It's called crossing when there's nothing that's gonna hit you.
That's why I like going real late at night most of my calls.
And thank you for showing the film. I'm happy to be a part of this.
Thing going, right? It's on? Can you hear me? Oh yeah. Hi, my name is Christopher. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I'm from the other side of the state, the other state, New York State. And my name is Christopher. So I want to know about Jersey City. I know New York City. We are trying to push for daylighting in New York City, and so I want to know what your plan with daylighting in Jersey City, because I just came off the train station. I don't see anything around here. This is like the hub of like Jersey City. I know Exchange Place is like one of the big spots of New Jersey City, but Journal Square is another one. What's your plan with expanding daylighting in certain areas of Jersey City?
Take that one. New Jersey is in a better position in a lot of ways because it is illegal to park within proximity to the crosswalk, and so we have been implementing daylighting over the past few years. We're up to over 100 intersections now throughout the city, trying to balance a mix of where we're getting requests, where we know the intersections are unsafe, where we are doing projects. So a lot of times we're able to do a whole corridor when we're doing a protected bike lane, because then there's opportunity to use that space and to redesign the roadway. So it's hugely important. It makes it more visible for everyone, whether you're driving or walking or cycling. And it also shortens the crosswalks or the crossing distance, so you're exposed to traffic for less time. So it's definitely a high priority for us. And one of the constraints has been just the resources, the time. Our contractor, we give them a lot to do it every year, and a lot of times they're not able to complete it in the season. So it's something that we're trying to figure out ways to do it more efficiently. One of the ways we've tried to speed up very quick build is our DPW. They don't have the equipment to actually do the striping, but they do have sometimes. They have delineators, and so if we can't get the striping in, what we'll just do is have them go out and put the delineators in, and that can stop people from parking too close to crosswalks and too close to the intersection. So that's might be something too to advocate for in New York City is, just putting the posts in. I know it's not a perfect solution. Some people do feel emboldened to park right on top of them, but it does deter at least a big portion of the population.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth, and my husband and I moved from Orange County, New York about a year ago to Jersey City. One of the reasons I wanted to move to Jersey City was driving on a country road. Some guy looking down, probably on his phone, smashed my car and his and left me with a serious concussion. So I was thrilled to come back to a city that's diverse and alive, and I am delighted to get on the bus every day, and there's always a conversation with a complete stranger that's usually enlightening, entertaining, and I'm thrilled. But one of the issues is you were talking about whatever vehicle we are. I take the bus. I've got about a 12-minute walk to the bus, and I'm really glad that we have bike lanes and people can use them. However, I have been standing on a sidewalk by a fence, looking at a garden, turned around, and was slammed into by a guy on a bike, an adult. Today, my husband and I were walking from the Heights, about a 19-minute walk, Oakland to Jefferson, and there were two kids on a bike, two boys about 10, 12, and another boy on an electric bike who came straight at me and started screaming. And my husband said to him, "Get out in the lane." There needs to also be a sense of teaching people, particularly kids, how do you become a responsible person when you have a bike? Just because you've got a bike doesn't mean you can use it wherever you feel like. Just because you're walking, you can't walk wherever you feel like it either. But there needs to be a sense of, from not just from things at home, but a school program, a public program. Bike safety includes how are you using your bike as a weapon or using it properly, the way the city is designed a safe place for you and people who walk on the sidewalk. That's part of city safety too.
I think what I liked in the movie with the Streets Project was, I think it was in Sweden, the originators of Vision Zero, where they said we need to design streets and public spaces, knowing that people are imperfect and that they're not, all of us are distracted, all of us are going to accidentally or not accidentally violate, some social contracts in public spaces. So I think I would lean on better design as much as possible, and assume that people are going to make some mistakes every once in a while. I think in terms of bikes on the sidewalk, of course we should be doing as much education as possible, but from my perspective, I have kids who ride bikes, and they're allowed to be on the sidewalk because they're under a certain age, and the streets are not safe enough for them. They are not safe enough, and I think that they should be entitled to get around their neighborhood safely.
I'm not arguing about small children, I'm talking about adults and young teens. And the guy who slammed into me on the sidewalk told me I should have been walking on the sidewalk by the curb, not close where he made
I'm sorry, no, I don't want to undermine what happened to you. Of course, we all have incidents that are terrible and scary, and I think probably a lot of people in this room have stories of dangerous incidents, but I think we need to get people into the public space and sharing it as much as we possibly can. I don't know if someone else has.
And like you said, infrastructure, I mean, your incident sounds like that could not necessarily have solved the problem, but, I mean, if a bike lane was right there and the person wasn't in it, you kind of wonder, like, did they not know that was a bike lane or whatever? A lot of people don't, actually, mostly drivers. No, they do, but, but the thing is, I do feel like, of course, the greatest danger is coming from people behind the wheel, and we focus a lot on what's happening with cyclists and other wheeled devices because we're not used to, I mean, the mayhem and the death and, injury that motor vehicles cause is just so far beyond any bikes on sidewalks could cause. But I totally empathize with, the close calls that you might have with an e-bike rider. I mean, especially in terms of delivery people who probably have gone through such death-defying lives just to get here and get a job, and then they're being pressured to make a certain amount of deliveries in a certain amount of time in all kinds of weather with, all the dangers they face on the streets, usually uninsured, badly paid, and so forth. I mean, those pictures that they showed, I guess it was an aerial view, was that in your film of, no, it was in the Street Project, an aerial view of the streets of New York when it was like trolley cars and people walking and kids and, the few motor vehicles that were on the street, and how it worked. I mean, I don't know, maybe a lot of people were killed, but most of them were actually behind the wheel, I think. I mean, cars were so dangerous, they had no seatbelts, no safety features at all. But people find a way to just blend and, it's almost like when there's more confusion, it works better sometimes. But that's not the way it works here, so, I think, infrastructure and education, and, trying to understand the head of the person, get inside that person to know what they're dealing with when these incidents happen.
Great.
A question for, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, filmmaker?
Joel.
I appreciate the way you put it together and we really learn about the people. And so I also really want to know now. The man, I had to get up at 3 o'clock to get to his job at 7. Is he finally, is he, how do you say that? Is he retired?
I'm in touch with him a little bit. I don't actually know whether he's working, but I know he fell in love and moved to Delaware.
Wow.
And I was looking up, see if I could find out any more information, and I saw he posted on Facebook a few days ago a picture of himself with a bass that was about like this big. So he's still fishing. I don't know if he's still working, but he's happy. He sent me pictures of his wedding.
That's good. That's really good. Because I would have been in trouble not knowing.
No, he's doing well.
Thank you for your movie. I have something I cannot let pass. I'm a school advocate as well, and as per your point that the parents live 3 blocks away, that is not the situation in Jersey City. Jersey City's public schools are very differently set up. Sometimes you will have kids that, for whatever reason, are going to a very different school. It may be for a dual language, it may be because in the inclusion class, it can be very, and then you have the middle schools and high schools that are far in between, and you will have to get to that point. So unfortunately, I feel this is why we have such a lot of car traffic in the morning, because the people that do live 3 blocks away, trust me, they're not getting into that. I mean, I walk way more than the 3 blocks, and I know my neighbors did as well. But I do see the ones that walk, that take the car, and unfortunately, what they want is their kid to be right in front of the school, and they drop them off on not just on the street, but where the kids need to cross. And that's perfectly fine because it has to be in front of the door. And that is what we need to like really educate the car drivers as well. Because I hear you about education. Everybody needs to kind of know a little bit of what are we doing. But when I say, oh, how are the car drivers? Oh, they already have a license. Well, obviously it does not work, right? Because what we've seen in the movie is that they run the red light. They don't care. I mean, we were gasping when we saw, what happened to you. So that license means nothing. So
He still drives. He was never prosecuted. He lives in the
can I
neighborhood.
please give you the mic because I want to know more about that.
So as it turns out, this is why community is so good. When I went out and Jay was seeing if I was okay, the neighbors came down. They come running. They said, we tried to stop him. At the time I was about to reapply for Medicaid. I had no health insurance. I get to the hospital, as I knew, because I worked in advocacy, I told my friend Jay, he's like, do you want me to go to the hospital with you in the ambulance? I said, no. You get the bike back to my apartment and then meet me at the hospital. You're not a doctor. And then they get me to the hospital, and then as I'm there, I'm calling a friend of mine, a mechanic, and he's like, why are you calling me? Call this bike lawyer, Steve Vaccaro. He came to the hospital at 1 a.m. And I had a concussion. They kept saying, we're gonna have to medevac you to the hospital if your leg keeps bleeding. And he was like, I'll be your lawyer, just sign these papers and I'll get on the case. So as I signed the papers, the lawyer, he went straight to the crime scene. The police, if you're ever in any of these incidences, forget the police, get a lawyer. They're not helpful. It's not seen as criminal, it's seen as a civil case. So my lawyer, he went to the building and the landlord was like, oh yeah, we have the videos, we'll get it for you. Those videos get scrubbed. So this was Friday, and then Saturday morning I wake up and my lawyer says, oh, Jay called me. He was skateboarding in the same area and he came across a Chevy Camaro with the side just ripped, that's the car that hit you. And Steve was like, I don't have my paralegal, can he go get a video? So he got a video. We found the guy that Sunday, and the police, they just let my case go. The detective assigned my case, went on vacation. So my only thing was, I had a nice civil suit, you know, and I got a nice Brompton. I went to travel to Europe for a month. I visited Amsterdam, Berlin, Copenhagen, Marble, and Stockholm, all bike-friendly cities by myself. And it was amazing. I was biking, like, this is the thing I get. A lot of people asking me, where was your helmet? Where was your helmet? Look, clearly in that crash, the helmet helped me. But when we focus on what cyclists are wearing, helmets, lights, we put the onus of responsibility on the individual and not the system at large. Why is my presence as a cyclist being questioned on the street when I can be near an 18-wheel truck that can kill you, you know? Yeah.
Thank you for your advocacy.
Sure.
Oh, thank you, Dolce. I've known Dolce for like 7 years now. It's like so weird. Anyway, my name is Mark. I'm an economist. Well, I'm an urban economist. I guess this is kind of a question, kind of not. I've been reading again The Power Broker by Robert Moses, and I've been really kind of disgusted at all of. I'm not going to say mistakes because he willfully did this, like things like roads that could have been public transit, could have been subways, could have been all kinds of things, and they end up being roads for cars. And now with the FIFA 2026 World Cup, I see now they're going to like, oh, we're going to make this bus lane. Yeah. And I'm like, that could be an extension of the Newark light rail. Because if you make that a car lane, what is going to happen is it's going, I mean, I just said it, Freudian slip. If you make it a bus lane, it's going to just become a car lane. The problem with buses is that you can defund them. This is why I'm a really big fan of trolleys. I'm really a big fan of public transit that's like, plus two, you can see it. It's like you can see it, and you see how they treat the bus. It's not just necessarily the people, it's like we can defund it and fund it whenever we feel like it. If you put some rail, some train, you know, like that FIFA 2026, the transit community, the urbanist community has a real opportunity for advocacy there and not allowing them to make that bus lane. That should be part of the Newark light rail extension. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that wasn't, like I said, that wasn't really.
I rode the first day on the light rail of New Jersey when it opened in Hoboken, and I think my only comments on that is I think bus infrastructure is a lot easier to implement on the existing streets that we have. I think when you think the light rail was put where there was a right of way, and they were able to put that in. I mean, the joke is there. We're not in Bergen County, and we don't go to Secaucus, Harrison, Kearney, or other cities in Hudson County, so the Hudson-Bergen light rail is neither really a Hudson light rail or a Hudson-Bergen light rail. I think it's kind of just like this random track that goes through a few different areas. I agree with you. I think it really should be an extension. I think everybody's been clamoring for that. But I think buses have a place, and they are very effective, and I think that discarding one mode of transit for another is a hard way to go about things. So I would just push back and say I think buses do have a very important place in our community, but I think it goes in tandem with other infrastructure.
They do, but I think another thing that we have a problem with in New Jersey is you have a private bus system. So essentially the bus system that we could advocate for is going to be even worse because you have this private bus system that people keep, so you have a separate but equal bus system that continues the segregation that's going on in your cities, in your labor market, and you have segregation in your transportation. So to me, I'd be totally okay with being like, let's also look at the bus as a valid form of transportation. Get rid of all the private buses, stop subsidizing them, and then I'd be okay with that. But since we're not going to do that, that's what I'm saying. They're going to turn that into like a bus lane. That not for everything, but for that lane specifically.
The bus lane that I ride was actually controlled by Academy buses, and so the first year that I moved up to the Heights 6 years ago from Hoboken, the buses would say they were coming and they would never show up. And I would continuously complain to New Jersey Transit this was happening. And they told me, oh no, they were there, you just missed the bus. And I was like, well, I was here at 8:07, there was no 8:07 bus. And then at 8:37, the bus showed up. So I was like, where was the 8:07 bus? And then it turned out that Academy was literally lying about supplying buses. And we were saying this for years, that they were lying about supplying buses. I'd be at the Port Authority, and the guy Dave, I bought him a pack of cigarettes. He was the Academy guy that used to help shepherd the buses out. I knew him, we were good friends. And he'd be like, oh yeah, we're not running the 620 today. And I was like, what do you mean you're not running the 620 today? And they're like, oh, we're just going to do the 640, we'll combine them, there's not enough people. and he worked for Academy and was like admitting that they were shortchanging New Jersey Transit. And then it finally came out, and now New Jersey Transit owns that line. They're running it themselves. We've seen an increase in frequency. We've seen new buses. So I think you're hitting the nail on the head, which is that, and I mean, it goes back to dedicated funding. Like, there's no funding for New Jersey Transit right now. So until that happens, I don't think we'll see an increase in service across the board for any rider, because the state at the top is refusing to say that this is a priority for the state. So to your point, there isn't funding, and it's going to be changed and added and changed and added, and then it's 15% fare hikes, because the state is saying this is not something we value. But I think we see it work, and when you leave a private bus carrier and go to state-run buses, like, it can be improved. And like, my service is much better. It comes every 10 minutes. But juxtaposed to Hoboken, Hoboken's getting 5 buses every 5 minutes, and we're getting 1 bus every 5 minutes, or 1 bus every 10 minutes. So I think you just have to kind of look at the different areas, but I think it all goes back to funding, and we just don't have that in the state right now. So until we push for that, and that is actually secured, I don't think we have the money to extend the Newark Light Rail. I don't think we can make the Hudson Bergen Light Rail go where we want to go. So I think that's where I'm trying to position a lot of my advocacy right now, is pushing the state and our local leaders to say, this is a need and this is something we should do.
Just want to remind people about the term jaywalker. It references pre-Civil War Kansas battles between the Jayhawkers, who are the abolitionist militants, and the border ruffians. So where does that become an insult? They wanted to portray those white advocates of racial equality, or some, as stupid. And that's where the word J comes from. It's a stupid middle income or working class farmer walking down the street road like they own it. This is Redeemer Southernist crap. It's an insult. And we need to start thinking about a way to deal with that. Because the reality is it's an old, Gone with the Wind, Birth of a Nation, Southern Civilian Council's slur against abolitionists.
I think it's an issue also when the weather comes, snow and ice in the ground. It should have been enforced to clean it up before the bike lane and the jogging lane was there. It's a problem for senior citizens, people like yourself, when these bikes, like the Uber Eats people in the bikes, they're running like crazy, and you're getting hit by them before you hit by the car. So you're right what we're saying. It's an issue. They should clean up that ice and snow up the ground and try to get the city to do that when we have bad situations, because it's issues like that. You can't even catch a bus because you're going to get hit by a bike and hit by a car. Anybody have issues with that? Get the city to enforce and clean up the grounds?
I guess I'll speak for this city to some extent. I do know the city has purchased specialized vehicles so that they can plow some of the sidewalks that are really heavily trafficked, as well as the bike lanes. They're small enough to fit into the bike lanes. So it's something that DPW does have. Every time we install new bike lanes, we do provide them with the widths, and I think they've been trying to more and more prioritize getting them cleaned. But to your point, something that there's still a lot of room for improvement. There's a lot of countries that get snow and have managed to find a way to do it more effectively than we have. So yeah, I agree. Still more room for improvement, and yeah, we will take that.
Hi, I'm Ron from the Heights, lifelong resident. The one concern I have is the infrastructure. They say if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it seems that there's a lot of broken road surfaces that aren't being repaired. And it becomes a detriment to all the cyclists and pedestrians, which forces bikers onto the sidewalk. And then it also creates a traffic chaos where cars and bikers are trying to avoid all the problematic potholes and snowbanks. Also the utility companies. They're digging up all the streets doing water and electrical repair work. They're digging trenches in the bike lanes and perpendicular gas lines. So they act as pseudo speed bumps. And they create a hindrance on the roadway. That was the word I was looking for earlier. And when people were trying to avoid it, you end up going into buildings, other cars, people, and that's the one area that's being avoided. And I didn't even hear much about it during this whole episode about road surface conditions, keeping up on it and maintaining it. Hopefully that would be a big priority in our future.
Yeah, absolutely. I know our engineering department has really made a lot of efficiency improvements and paves more miles of streets than has ever been happening in Jersey City in the past. So I know there's still many streets that are in very rough condition. And there's, again, they're trying to improve contracts as much as they can and be able to tackle more of those streets every year. And to your point about the utility cuts, and I will say folks in our department have been looking at ways to hold utility companies, MUA, et cetera, to more account for the conditions of the streets and for paving larger sections of the streets when they have done utility work. It's something that faces some pressure because obviously if you're asking them to pave a larger area, it's a larger cost. And so I think some of these things are going to take time as people adjust. But yeah, I think very true that when you're encountering those conditions, whether you're driving or cycling, it can be really dangerous, and then you understand why people are choosing to take the sidewalk, and so it's something we're continuing to work on.
One thing about that is that if people are going the speed limit, or they should be going lower, in my opinion, like 20 miles per hour maximum, they aren't going to be swinging around potholes and bumps and all the other problems on the asphalt. But yeah, we don't want them there, but if people would slow down, it would make it a lot less dangerous in so many ways. Yeah.
I just can't resist talking about trucks, because the condition of our streets is made much worse by very large trucks, and our city doesn't, or I don't actually know whether we have rules or just no enforcement about very large trucks, but cities have control over the types of vehicles that are in them, and we can have smaller trucks doing deliveries, which would be safer for bike riders, for pedestrians, and better for our streets, and take up less resources of constant paving and repaving. So if you want to talk more about that.
That's where
we can.
Taxing trucks and large vehicles like SUVs more.
Yeah, our streets aren't really designed for such big
they should be paying for it.
Question sort of on that theme. Is Jersey City thinking about congestion pricing and the impact of that on our city? I know that's like a really big topic and politicians love to say it. I don't know if it's going to come to fruition, but are we planning and thinking about how the influx of traffic might impact our city streets?
So we haven't been super active on looking at that impact. We, in general, I think that it makes sense for New York City. It would be nice if it were a more collaborative regional approach, so that we were thinking about the impacts beyond New York City and even the funding that will be generated from congestion pricing. If there was more of a scheme of sharing that or investing in transit for people getting into the city. So I think there are still a lot of questions about how it's going to impact us, and yeah.
Can I add a question? Can I add a question or one quick question?
Let me make sure if we get a second question, if someone else who hasn't.
I can just speak. I'm not enough. Okay, well, let's give this gentleman something to do. I was watching the second documentary, and I heard at the very end, it sounds very loud to me, I heard at the very end someone talking about the streets and what you look at, and you just kind of get used to what you see, and you accept that as normal. And I wonder to what extent that happens with our process of fixing it. Because as a person that's paid attention to my life and then the lifetimes and generations before, We've gone through periods in this country where everyone just throws up their hand and go, well, gee, we can't get anything done. That's just the way it is. And then people come along and go, this is absolute nonsense. And there are these great sprints where we build. I mean, for God's sakes, the path was built before World War I, factually. And it's a complicated system. A great majority of the MTA, when it was 3 transit systems competing with each other, there was so much desire to do it that there was competition. And now we have this, like, gee willikers, I sure don't want to ask anyone to take their parking space. And I wonder to what extent any of you feel that there is going to have to be some point in New Jersey, in Jersey City, and in America at large, because as the gentleman at the end mentioned, which I think this applies to many things, we always seem to find the money for the things that no one here cares about. It just magically appears. And insofar I'm learning now, many cities didn't have budgets until like the early 20th century. They were just going, yeah, we got to get something done. Yeah, sure, we'll figure it out. And that kind of attitude, although certainly not good civil society or like a good operational government, we got the Brooklyn Bridge out of that. We got some things that were really important. We got some parkways that were very necessary. So what extent do you all feel that we're going to have to do more? And I can't, I'll know when I see it using the Supreme Court definition. I don't have an answer for this. It's not like I have a great idea of like, whoa, if you would all just do this. I'm asking you, what do we do?
You mean like putting in bike infrastructure and safety, pedestrian?
I suppose I'm asking about how do we change the perspective of, I see it now, it's like these individual, like you go to individual tasks, you go to a neighborhood association, you say, hey, we wanna put in a bike lane. And it becomes this 4 to 8 year discussion about, well, how's that gonna affect this business? How's it gonna do this? How's it gonna do this? And there's all these studies, and I understand, like, again, as you said in the end, like, I don't wanna pick a fight with anyone, because I understand everyone's just doing their job, but at a certain point, it's like, can we start thinking as a society, start thinking together? It's like, no. It's not about one green line on a road. It's about what kind of city do we want to have? And to me, it always seems completely in contrast to people that say, like, no, we don't want that because we need to make money. It's like, this is going to make you so much money, you're not even going to believe it. And the studies are there. And I'm just kind of wondering, it's like, how do we get that all coalesced? Because all the data is just like loose threads lying on a table. Like, when do we tie that together into a rope to pull something?
Well, they did point out in the street project how, I think they put $1 million on each human life. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Which is such a random amount. I guess each human life is worth a lot more. But, when cities complain about not having, or cities claim that they don't have money in the budget, the human lives, whether they're killed or badly injured or just injured, or inconvenienced or whatever, if you're taking, public transit, biking and walking, that's money that gets spent each time an incident happens. So find that money before it needs to be spent to make up for a human life. But I think we're doing that here in Jersey City. I think we've made a huge amount of progress.
My tech is, I think with the one, I don't remember your name in the red, but I think one approach that I think about a lot is dreaming big and, asking for the most. We're not always going to get it, but I think helping people awaken to the possibilities, like, we were at a tiny community meeting talking about Lincoln Park, and they presented 3 options, and they were all terrible options. And at that meeting, we said, there's 3 other great options, and everyone was like, oh, well, these are good options, and we're like, okay, dream bigger. Like, we need to demand more, and then I think there is a hopelessness that does come in. That's a little bit like, why do I have to fight over every street corner? So I understand that. And then the other thing that I'm a broken record on, but we do have to show up. That one voice at one meeting goes really far. Almost no one shows up at these meetings. So if you call in, yes, it's extremely inconvenient. It's at 9 a.m. or it's at noon or it's at 6 p.m. Terrible meeting times, and you can't show up at all of them. But if you can show up, your voice will go a long way. So that's what I focus on personally.
I guess adding into that, I think something Matt said to me earlier, but I think politicians are very comfortable, and I think a lot of politicians and politics today is like people staying in office, so they're trying to do the least to get the most results, which is, oh, I did X, Y, Z, but you can still elect me because I didn't do all these other things. And I think for what you talked about and having studied history a lot, it's people back then, like politics was for the common good. So people really did things for the sake of really improving society for everybody and not for the two business owners on the street that might have had a negative impact. And I think that's good and bad in some regards. And so there's pros and cons to that. And I think in this day and age, the people that have the most impact in a negative way are the loudest. And so as a result, people tend to gravitate towards those responses. And exactly what you're saying is that if we advocate on the opposite end of the spectrum, it kind of evens out the playing field. But I do also want to say I didn't want to discourage from dreaming big on the light rail. Like I would love to have the light rail go to MetLife. For me, that would make my commute to a Giants game or to the American Dream like so much easier. But it's at this point, it's like how do we advocate for the things that are achievable and then work from that point forward? And so I think it's kind of a combination of the two. But I do think it starts by electing people that will actually fight for what's the best for the community and not just for the people that donate the most money to them. And I think that's a problem that we see.
One more question.
I'll take off my moderator hat for just like a second here, just in terms of like what's possible in showing up. The turnpike is not just widening, like doing a $11 billion widening through Bayonne, Jersey City, and Hoboken. It has a unprecedented $24 billion capital plan for 10 years. The previous one was only $7 billion. Right, and so there's a lot of money for transit. Transit is completely unfunded. There's no money dedicated to capital projects, and there's a huge backlog, and what I wanted to say in terms of showing up, I rewatched that. There was a public meeting. There were public hearings. It was March 18th and March 20th during the depths of the beginning of the pandemic. And they lined up 20 lobbyists to speak, all lobbyists. There's one true public comment. The only public comment was from someone that said, you have all this cut through. There's this someone from northern Monmouth County. They're like, oh, there's all this cut through. You got to stop it. They're getting on the turnpike for free or the parkway. No, that was the comment. And then there you go. 38% hike for turnpike tolls. 20-something% for parkway. $24 billion in highway expansions across New Jersey for the next 10 years. So, I mean, that level of public comment, it's accessible to us, but obviously the pandemic changed things. I think there's a lot of room to, if the public does not speak up, then it's special interest instead of the public interest that is reflected in the decisions. New Jersey apparently does have a lot of money, so.
Don't forget they also baked in the yearly increase in that as well. So those tolls go up yearly, which is what New Jersey Transit wants to implement as well. So we'll get a 15% increase, and then every single year we'll see 3% on top of that 50% for perpetuity. So they sneak that in at the end.
One more question. Give me one more question. Mike.
Hi, my name is Daniel Morte. I am a daily cyclist. It's been my method of commuting for the past 10 years. And I have been trying to be more of an advocate for cycling. And I've been trying to get to a lot of the meetings and stuff like that, but my work schedule has always been in the way. Other responsibilities have always been in the way. But I use my social media a lot. I posted a lot of photos and videos of people on the bike lanes, and I would love to show a video of me trying to survive getting up Cayman Point and not dying. And one of my biggest goals in life is to switch the bike lanes to the other side because I feel like it's very dangerous. I just want to know if a lot of cyclists use their social media to really get their point across in terms of how dangerous roads can be, and I just want to know, do the powers that be really take that into consideration, or we just have to find a way to get time to really go to these meetings? I definitely am going to make more of an effort to do that, but I just want to know, does the social media definitely have that impact, and if we can find a way to really use that as evidence to really justify that we need better roads.
I guess I would say it's a mix. There are some people who it's going to reach. Some of the elected officials are more active on social media, so I think it maybe has a potential to reach them more. I do think that's obviously a way to connect with a lot of people. But I will also say that showing up at the meetings does tend to matter, especially hearing new voices, seeing new people that you're not expecting. I think that
sometimes when the same people show up to all the meetings, there's this discounting of it, like, oh, of course they're saying this comment, they're the people we expect to. But the more people who we haven't heard from before, who live in the neighborhoods, we've been seeing so much more of that, and I think it's thanks to a lot of the advocacy going literally, I think, Colin, you've done a lot on the west side, Talia, just going like literally talking to your neighbors, and we see them coming out to the meetings, and that's huge. But to your point, we know we're not reaching everyone with those meetings because they're not at convenient times. We're trying to open up more opportunities for just putting our email out there, putting a regular public comment forum out there, and we do read those, and so that's another way of getting directly to us. So I think it's probably a mixture of things. I don't know if any of you have examples of like the social media impact and have used that, but.
I sometimes think it falls on deaf ears, to be honest. Like I said, I think for me, I do it more just so it's like in the public realm, and it's like maybe it sometimes ends up being a gotcha moment where it's like, oh look, we talked about this 6 years ago, like, and you didn't do anything about it. But I think it's paired. So I definitely would say that keep doing it, because my opinion, I think we see it across places, is like videos and photos don't lie. Like those are evidence that people are going to rely on as we go forward. And then I think it's generating like interest in the neighborhood and generating people that can go. So if you can't make a meeting, somebody else can go. For me, like I can't make every New Jersey TransAlt board meeting. It's hard for me. Like I have a full-time job in the city from 9 to 5. Sometimes it's till 7 p.m. And it's like, how am I going to get on a phone call and justify to my boss that I'm like headphones in talking at New Jersey TransAlt board meeting? And so it's like weighing those two things, but trying to do the most I can at certain times, and then sometimes just falling back to putting something on X and saying this is what I'm going to post. So I don't think it's pointless, but I also think it has to be paired with actually going into those meetings and showing your face, because it's really easy to be behind a screen and post something. But until you show up in person, I think that is, you put that physical value there when you do that.
One other thing about showing up in person is that it helps other people show up in person. Yeah. So it's true, we have to carry the burden together. We can't all show up at all meetings, but if you do show up at one, you can help someone else show up or say something that they wanted to say but were afraid to say. And it helps give other people power around you. So even if you can only go to one of the 10 meetings, try to make that one, the one where you help other people and get more voices heard.
My dream is to make it to Newark in person for a meeting, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to make that happen with our timing. So.
Just in case folks aren't familiar, I think we can promote again the tool the city put out for reporting intersection dangers. That's definitely, I think, one way to not have to show up. I think C-Click Fix is another way. And if there's people parking on corners, there's this app called Watts, WTS. It works differently in different neighborhoods, but if you persist, it seems to change their opinion about whether it's allowed or not. So we'll maybe take one or two last questions.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, just as somebody who's done a lot of social media for bikejc for 10 years now, my personal approach to it has always been, I don't know that the decision makers are going to see it or care about it, but I hope that it can inspire and provoke and inform other people to then go to those meetings. And maybe it's indirect, but hopefully it has an effect that way.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the second question. Thank you for the second question. So I want to know about. I'm in New York City. So New York State, they're trying to push this bill called Semi's Law that will require that will allow the New York City DOT to lower the speed limits anyhow, adjust the speed limits. They can make it higher, they can make it lower. So I want to know about from the New Jersey side, like what's your steps on that? Trying to put it for like Jersey City and Hoboken, and even Newark too. So.
Yeah, Hoboken's 20 citywide now. So I don't know what New Jersey's policy on that, but they did it somehow. So.
I think we do have the ability to do that on our streets, on our local streets, and it's something that the city was awarded through the Infrastructure Act at the federal level, a Safe Streets for All grant, and one of the studies we're going to be able to do with that is following what Hoboken did and doing a citywide speed limit reduction study, and and hopefully being able to implement that. It's a huge tool because we saw that speed really matters when it comes to the severity of the crashes, and in a positive way, a lot of our streets are fairly narrow, and there are a lot of intersections, and so a lot of traffic is already actually moving at pretty slow speeds, at least during the most busy periods of the day, which I think has allowed us to have lower fatality and serious injury numbers than we would otherwise. I think New York City being able to do that will be huge, and then certainly something that we're interested in here as well.
Thank you.
Amazing. Let's close for questions, and any last parting thoughts, reflections from folks?
Well, I just wanted to bring up the right on red situation and how horrendous it is in the city. And I know New York doesn't have right on red, doesn't allow right on red. Every time I see somebody doing a right on red in New York, it's a New Jersey resident or New Jersey license plate. I don't know where they live. But yes, I feel like that would be a huge improvement in both pedestrian and cyclist and other outside of motor vehicle safety. But I know it's a state mandate.
We're able to. We've been every year trying to kind of chip away at intersections. We have compiled a list of quite a few intersections that we think we can introduce all at once. It would be something like 60 plus more intersections. We looked at proximity to schools and parks and bike lanes as places that are the most vulnerable, high injury network, looking at different areas of the city, and so we agree. We've seen in our data, looking at the crash reports, some of the serious injuries that occurred last year of pedestrians and someone on a scooter were from right turns on red. So we do know that that's dangerous. I think it was at the meeting in Journal Square where someone brought up right turn on red, and I think there was applause. Elected officials are pretty supportive of it. I think there's kind of a growing recognition that it doesn't actually help traffic move faster in a city environment, and it's really dangerous. So I agree. It's something we'll work on.
Sure.
So just a quick follow-up. So is there a reason to not do it as kind of a blanket thing and just do it as an intersection by intersection?
I think we can. I think there's been, I guess, uncertainty on whether there will be pushback if we try to do it as a citywide ordinance as opposed to intersection by intersection or kind of bolt. But it's definitely within the realm of possibility. And I think other cities, when we've looked at some other case studies, as they've grown and you can kind of say, oh, well, 70% of our intersections are no right on red anyway, so why don't we just take the next step? So I think there's pros and cons to both approaches, and maybe if you all have conversations, you can let us know if there's large amounts of support, and that will make it easier for the council to make a decision one way or another.
We're at time here. Thank you for the super thoughtful discussion. Thank you for the show. Thank you for sharing your story. And yeah, let's continue the conversation. One more shout out. Thank you to Indra and Tyler for all the work and